Imagine scrolling your feed and just seeing this raw, shaky video.
Yeah, those are always so intense.
Right. It's a young man lying on the road near Cummings Koker in Corriverton, Guyana. And the crowd around him isn't just crying. I mean, they are furious.
Absolutely boiling over.
Exactly. They were screaming that the police didn't just hit this motorcyclist. You know, they hunted him.
That they did it on purpose.
Yeah. And your heart just drops. I mean, your immediate instinct as a human is outrage. But what do you do when the facts haven't actually arrived yet?
And when a community is just on the absolute brink.
Right. Because that is exactly what we are tackling on this deep dive today.
It is the ultimate test of media literacy, honestly. And emotional control, too.
Oh, for sure. So today, we are putting on our investigative news analyst hats. We are going to use this incredibly tense, developing situation out of Corriverton to basically build the exact framework you need to process these explosive allegations responsibly.
Because in those initial moments, you aren't looking at a settled narrative. You're looking at a chaotic, high-stakes collision of grief and rumor.
Yeah, the line between fact and fiction is practically invisible. We are going to look at how to verify these intense claims without immediately just jumping to conclusions.
It's such a vital skill for anyone consuming news right now.
It really is.
Because when you are dealing with an incident that has the potential to, completely fracture the trust between a community and its law enforcement, how we share information can literally dictate what happens next on the ground.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start by separating the raw claims from the confirmed reality right now.
Wow.
We need to look at the anatomy of the incident itself.
Right, getting down to the basics.
Because the reports coming from the residents near Cummings Koker contain some just incredibly severe allegations. First, that a young motorcyclist was struck by a police vehicle.
But they aren't calling it a traffic accident, which is the crucial part.
No, they are claiming the police deliberately struck him.
And that single word, deliberately, that changes the entire legal and moral paradigm.
It really does.
It moves the whole event from a tragic failure of traffic safety to an intentional act of state violence.
And the allegations, well, they get worse. The residents claim that after this deliberate strike, the officers left the young man lying on the roadway for some time.
Yeah, that they didn't render immediate aid.
Exactly. Eventually, instead of calling an ambulance, the residents say the officers placed him into the back of the police vehicle. And the final tragic piece of this is that the young motorcyclist later died from his injuries.
It paints a picture of extreme malice, and just profound negligence.
It's horrific.
When a community witnesses something like that, the natural human response is to demand immediate accountability. The emotional truth of that community is very real.
But I want to push back here for a second because we have to look at this like a blurry photograph.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah. We can see the frightening shapes of these allegations. We can see the outline of a massive tragedy. But we need to focus the lens. Because while the community story is terrifying, we have a dead motorcyclist and a damaged police vehicle.
Right. Those are physical realities on the ground right now.
Exactly. We aren't questioning if a collision happened. So, push comes to shove. What is actually unverified right now?
Well, it's the context. The intent and the exact sequence of events, those remain entirely unverified.
Okay.
Yes, we have a tragic death in a collision, but currently, based on the sources we have, nothing regarding the actual nature of the incident is independently corroborated.
Because there is no official statement from the Guyana police force yet, right?
Exactly. We don't know the speed, the trajectory, or the motivation. As an investigative analyst, the only verified fact you can confidently write on your whiteboard right now is this: the community is making these allegations.
Wow. That is a really tough pill to swallow when the allegations are this horrific.
It is. It feels wrong almost.
Yeah. You're saying we have to structurally file this under allegation rather than fact until the receipts are shown, even if the crowd seems, universally convinced.
Precisely. Because if you assume the allegations of a deliberate strike are true from minute one, Cognitive bias will just color every single piece of evidence you look at afterward.
You just end up confirming your own bias.
You will. You look for data that confirms your outrage, and you completely ignore data that suggests it might have been a tragic accident. You have to maintain that objective distance.
Which begs the question, I mean, if we can't just take the crowd's outrage as absolute fact and the police haven't said a word, where exactly does the first piece of undeniable truth come from in a place like Cummings Koker?
You have to start building a web of corroboration.
Okay, how do we build that investigation blueprint to move from community rumor to official record?
Well, you do it with extreme caution. The initial instinct is to rely heavily on eyewitness accounts from the residents.
Sure, you want to talk to the people who were there?
Right, you want to get them on the record, detailing exactly where they were standing, their line of sight, what they saw.
Color me skeptical on that, though. I mean, human memory is notoriously unreliable, especially in chaotic, traumatic events like this.
Oh, absolutely.
You have a loud crash, screaming, panic, a heavy police presence. Can we really trust the eyewitness accounts of outraged residents?
It's a very valid concern.
Like, if 20 people are furious at the police, isn't there some sort of psychological mechanism where they start remembering the event in a way that validates their collective anger?
What's fascinating here is that you are describing the misinformation effect. And it's exactly why investigators view eyewitness testimony as the starting line, not the finish line.
Okay, explain that.
So, when a traumatic event occurs, adrenaline just floods the system. The human brain actually stops encoding peripheral details effectively. It basically just it tunnel visions.
So the memory is already fragmented before the dust even settles.
Exactly. And here is where it gets super dangerous for investigators. Because the memory is fragmented, the brain hates those gaps.
Who wants a complete story?
Right. It becomes highly susceptible to suggestion. If one person in the crowd yells, "They hit him on purpose, they swerved into him."
Oh, wow. The brains of the people standing nearby will subconsciously take that suggestion?
Exactly. They take it and fill in their own memory gaps. Suddenly, 5 people genuinely believe they saw the police car accelerate and swerve, even if the vehicle was actually, braking in a straight line.
That is terrifying. The collective narrative literally overwrites the individual memory.
It really does.
So if the witnesses are unintentionally compromising each other's memories, we have to look for physical, objective evidence that doesn't have an emotional state, right? We need CCTV.
We do, yes. But even CCTV isn't the magic bullet people think it is.
Really?
Yeah. Investigators and journalists need to canvass every business and residential camera around Cummings Koker. But finding a camera is just step one.
Right, because we aren't talking about 4K Hollywood cameras here.
Not at all.
We are usually talking about a cheap security camera bolted to a storefront that shoots, 15 frames per second?
Exactly.
Does a camera like that actually have the technical fidelity to prove whether a police cruiser accelerated intentionally?
That is the exact technical hurdle they face. When you have a low frame rate and a fast-moving vehicle, you get severe motion blur.
So you can't see the details.
Right. You don't get a crisp image of the driver's face or the exact point of impact. So investigators have to use photogrammetry.
Photogrammetry? What is that?
They measured the actual distance between fixed points on the street, like 2 light poles. Then they count the number of video frames it takes for the police vehicle to pass between them.
Oh, wow. And that is how you calculate the true speed.
Precise.
And speed is a huge indicator of intent. Like if they were accelerating through the intersection, that really supports the community's claim.
It does.
But if they were braking aggressively, leaving skid marks, well, that points toward an accident.
Exactly. And then you pair that digital forensic analysis with the medical records. The community claims he died from these specific injuries, right?
Yeah.
Well, to prove the how, you need a forensic pathologist. They aren't just looking at a broken bone. They're looking at impact angles and patterned bruising.
So they can actually tell the difference between a high-speed, deliberate ramming and, say, a standard side swipe.
Yes, absolutely. For example, in a deliberate perpendicular ramming, you expect to see massive crush injuries.
Right. Direct force.
You'd see specific fractures on the side of the body that took the impact, often matching the literal geometry of the vehicle's bumper.
That makes sense.
But in a side swipe or an accidental clipping, you might see more sliding injuries, road rash, or contra-coupe injuries from where the victim was thrown and hit the pavement.
The physical trauma tells a story that cannot be influenced by the crowd.
Exactly. It's objective data.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Knowing where to find the CCTV and the medical reports is only half the battle, right? Finding the evidence doesn't tell you the whole story. Interrogating the evidence is how you actually construct a balanced timeline of events. It's like reverse engineering a crash.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, building that rigid timeline is the only way to hold institutions accountable.
How so?
Well, you don't just ask the medical staff, did he die? You have to ask highly targeted questions that verify or dismantle the specific timeline alleged by the community.
Walk me through that interrogation phase. Who are the specific entities we need to question? And how do we ensure we aren't just getting fed a sanitized narrative?
Well, first, you demand an official statement from the Guyana police force, obviously. But you demand the raw data.
Not just the PR spin.
Right. You don't just want a press release, you want the dispatch logs.
Yeah.
When was the officer's vehicle dispatched?
Okay.
Were they responding to an active emergency call, which, might explain high speeds? Or were they on routine patrol? Does the cruiser have GPS telemetry that can independently verify their speed and braking, regardless of what the CCTV shows?
Good point. And what about the witnesses? If we know their memories are susceptible to the misinformation effect, how do we question them effectively without ruining the data?
You isolate them immediately, and you ask them very open-ended questions.
Like what?
Things like, where were you standing? Or what did you hear before you saw the impact? You never feed them details.
You want to see if their stories match up on the foundational facts before the crowd mentality took over.
Exactly. You have to get to the core of what they actually experienced.
And then we get to the medical personnel, which brings us to the secondary allegations. And honestly, this is the part of the community's claim that is just the most chilling.
The timeline of the victim's treatment after the crash.
Right. So what does this all mean? We've mapped out how to find the truth of the collision, but we need to look at why the aftermath matters just as much.
It matters immensely.
Let's say the initial strike is proven by that photogrammetry and the medical records to be a complete accident, a horrific, tragic mistake. But the community's claim is that he was left lying on the roadway for some time and then eventually picked up and just tossed into the back of a police vehicle. Doesn't that open up massive legal and ethical issues entirely separate from the crash itself?
This raises an important question about the fundamental duty of care. The legal, policing, and human rights implications of the aftermath are just staggering.
Because they have a responsibility once they're there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Once law enforcement officers are on the scene of an injury, regardless of who caused it, their immediate legal priority must be preserving life and securing emergency medical attention.
It's the concept of the golden hour in trauma care, right?
Exactly.
That the first 60 minutes after a traumatic injury are the absolute most critical for preventing death.
They are.
So if the allegations hold true that the officers left him on the road and delayed care, they are actively bleeding out that golden hour.
Exactly. And the manner of transport is just as critical. In trauma care, if someone is struck by a vehicle, you have to assume severe spinal injuries and internal bleeding.
You can't just move them casually.
No. Transporting a trauma victim without a rigid backboard, without a cervical collar, and without paramedics stabilizing their vitals.
You could easily sever a spinal cord with a broken vertebra just by lifting them into the back of a truck.
It can literally be a death sentence, which is why, if these allegations are proven true, the human rights implications are so severe.
It points to something much bigger than just two officers.
Right. It speaks to systemic policing protocols. Yeah. What is the standard operating procedure for the Guyana police force in a traffic accident involving a severe injury?
Are officers trained to secure the scene and call an ambulance?
Are they trained in basic first aid? Or is the culture such that a severely injured citizen is treated like a logistical problem and just thrown into the back of a vehicle?
It shifts the focus from one potentially bad driver to a systemic failure of the entire department. Denying immediate proper medical care is a violation of the basic right to life and bodily security.
And depending on the jurisdiction's laws, if that delay or improper transport contributed to his death, it could become a criminal investigation into gross negligence or even manslaughter.
Wow.
It completely fractures whatever fragile trust existed between the community of Corriverton and the police force.
Because when a community feels they have just witnessed a deliberate execution followed by a callous cover-up, the potential for civil unrest is massive. It's an absolute powder keg.
Which is exactly why the speed and transparency of the official investigation are so vital here.
But the police force is currently silent.
Right. When the police force remains silent, when they don't immediately release the dispatch logs or the preliminary findings, that silence creates a vacuum.
And human nature abhors a vacuum. The outrage, the unverified claims, the raw emotion of the crowd immediately rushes in to fill it.
The longer the delay in providing verified, objective facts, the more entrenched the community's allegations become as absolute truth in the public consciousness.
It really highlights the immense, almost terrifying responsibility of journalists and news analysts in these moments.
It's a tightrope walk.
Reporting on a situation like the one at Cummings Koker is like performing surgery in the dark. You have to intervene, you have to report on it because the public's right to know is critical.
The community's outcry is a news event in itself.
Exactly. But if you make one wrong cut, if you validate an unverified rumor as a verified fact, you can cause irreparable damage. You could incite a riot based on an optical illusion or the misinformation effect of a panicked crowd.
But conversely, if the media dismisses the community's claims and just waits passively for a sanitized, heavily edited police press release, they might be complicit in covering up a grave human rights abuse.
You really have to act as the filter. You take the raw, blazing heat of the community's trauma and you channel it into a cold, objective timeline.
You demand the evidence before you demand the verdict.
So well said. We took a very raw, terrifying report from Corriverton today. A young motorcyclist dead, and a community pointing the finger squarely at deliberate police action and gross negligence.
And instead of just reacting to that horror, we outlined the blueprint for finding the truth.
We looked at the necessity of moving beyond the understandably chaotic eyewitness accounts to secure physical data, the CCTV, the frame rate analysis, the forensic pathology.
We broke down how to interrogate that evidence, syncing dispatch logs with camera timestamps to build an unbreakable timeline.
And we looked at the massive stakes involved, how the secondary allegations regarding the duty of care, the golden hour, and systemic policing failures carry profound human rights implications, even if the initial crash was an accident.
It is a stark reminder of why objective investigation is the bedrock of accountability.
So for you listening, here is your takeaway for today. The next time you are scrolling and you see fast-moving, emotionally charged news, whether it's an incident in Guyana or a breaking story in your own hometown, act like an investigative analyst.
Feel the anger, have empathy for the tragedy. You know, you're human.
But then pause. Look for the independent verification. Look for the physical evidence. Do not accept a narrative as absolute truth until the receipts are firmly on the table.
Because until you do, you're just looking at a blurry photograph.
And facts are the only thing that can actually secure justice. Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. We talked about how the silence of authorities creates a vacuum filled by outrage. But consider how our brains process information in this digital age.
It's so fast now.
Right. How does that initial framing of an incident, the very first horrific claim that hits your feed, algorithmically amplified before investigators even arrive on the scene, permanently shape public perception?
That is the million-dollar question.
If a terrifying, blurry photograph is the first thing millions of people see, does it permanently alter how we view the clear picture when it finally develops?